Hello, everyone. Welcome. I am the Night Walker, and I'm here to do another movie review. I was recently asked if I could talk about the Netflix 2019 film Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile, which is another film about Ted Bundy, the serial killer. And I decided, I was asked to do this. I'm going to go ahead and do it because I have seen the film. Ultimately, I do like the film. It definitely has its place. I will say right off the bat, though, if you're a true crime fanatic and you want to know about Ted Bundy, this may not be. If you're more interested in learning the details of his crimes or how things went as far as like you know, his capture, his killing spree, things like that. There are many other films about Ted Bundy. Now, this movie has stirred up quite a bit of controversy for a number of reasons. One of the main reasons being that, the role of Ted Bundy in this movie is played by Zac Efron, who I think a lot of people right off the bat would never, in their wildest dreams, ever picture the idea of Zac Efron playing a serial killer, let alone playing Ted Bundy. And I think people were really concerned about whether or not he could do a role like this because Zac Efron, of course, we all know him from the High School Musical films, and we know him from comedies. He's the Baywatch remake and the Neighbors movies and things like that. He's not known 17 again, so he's not known for really serious dramatic roles and especially playing dark character roles and things. And so a lot of people were really worried about that. So that was pretty controversial in and of itself. Also, too, one of the things that made it controversial was just the fact that we were getting yet another movie about Ted Bundy because people are getting to the point where there's many movies about Ted Bundy. There are so many direct to video movies about Ted Bundy. There's on my old channel I reviewed the movie Ted Bundy with Michael Riley Burke where he played Ted Bundy, and that one had is still on my old channel on Cinema 77 Horror and Cult Film Lover. And on that one, I talked about how he had, you know, that movie really is more detailing his killing spree, and it's more about him, you know, how he chose his victims, how he went after them, and he's showing more what an animal he was. There's another movie about Ted Bundy that stars Corin Nemec, who was, mostly he was famous for the TV series back in the 90s, Parker Lewis Can't Lose. That's really the thing he was mostly known for. And he started doing a series of um, these serial killer low budget movies. There's another movie where he played, Richard Speck. And, of course, there were TV movies. There was, The Stranger Beside Me, that was based on Anne Rule's book, because Anne Rule at one point worked in if you're a Ted Bundy, you know, um, I don't want to say fan, but if you're somebody who's into true crime and the story about Ted Bundy and things, you knew that at one point Ted Bundy worked in he worked in a suicide hotline prevention center, and the lady that he worked next to was Anne Rule, who at the time, even at the time, she was a writer and she was writing newspaper articles, things like that, and she was she's becoming a writer of true crime, and ultimately she wrote a book about her experience, with Ted Bundy. And so there was that movie. That was a TV movie with Barbara Hershey and William Campbell as Ted Bundy. There's of course the most one of the most popular ones is The Deliberate Stranger, starring Mark Harmon as Ted Bundy, and that movie is really really good. But that's more. See, that's the thing. Kind of like with every movie about Ted Bundy, we get like a different perspective, and this movie here, Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile, is no different. Okay, because the movie The Deliberate Stranger really takes place more at the point of view from the investigators and the police and the detectives and how they searched for him and the many years it took and all the effort it took and how they were finally able to get him and bring him to justice. And then, like I said, you have movies like Ted Bundy where the focus is more on his killing spree and showing how he chose his victims, how he went about stalking and killing them and things, and ultimately coming to his end and things. You had, The Stranger Beside Me, which is Anne Rule's point of view. This movie here is based off of a book by Elizabeth Kepler. Cleffer. I'm sorry. She was actually the girlfriend of Ted Bundy, and she had a daughter, and the two of them, basically formed a family, and for many years they lived together. And even though they had their rough moments, um, she didn't want to believe what, when it came out, and she started to suspect, Ted Bundy, that could have been, the killer of these women, and she didn't want to believe it. She just did not want to believe it. And um, in this movie, she's played by Lily Collins, who's the daughter of Phil Collins. She does a really good job. Um, she's very conflicted. She's very torn up about uh, having to deal with the whole thing, and she's not entirely sure. So she carries around a certain amount of guilt, in the sense that she ends up contacting, the authorities and telling them they might want to just take a look at him. But really, a lot of it was she just wanted to just make sure that it wasn't him. And over time, um, for many, many years, she did not want to believe him. He, had this very strong hold over her, even though there were points, she admitted in her book and in her interviews and things, she admitted that there were points where he was abusive towards her and that he was nasty. And she did see that he had a very dark side, especially when it came to sex. Um, that he could be very smug and just narcissistic and things like that. And so those were it was those elements, when she saw that stuff. And then I think at one point she found like handcuffs in his car and maybe a knife, if I remember correctly. And, it was all these things, that kind of put the idea into her head that maybe it's kind of possible that maybe that Ted Bundy did this, that he could have been the killer. But the story starts off that Elizabeth is in a bar, and she's, talking about her breakup with, with her ex-husband and stuff. And, just talking about it's her and her daughter now. And, she's, just, and pretty much this is the first time she's, been able to get out, and she just wants to cut loose and have a good time and, have some drinks and everything else. And they're in this bar, and, Ted Bundy, like I said, is played by Zac Efron. She meets him, and the two of them, they start dancing and they fall in love, and they start, their relationship, which lasted for many years. But like I said, as the story progresses, there are moments where she finds that he has like plaster of Paris in his medicine cabinet, that she's seeing like all these little things. And as she's reading these stories about the missing girls, more and more and more, it kind of comes into her mind that maybe he could have, maybe he could have had something to do with this. And he's, constantly charming her. He's constantly telling her that it wasn't him, that, they've got it wrong. And about 10 minutes into the movie, Ted Bundy is picked up by a sheriff. We find out that the sheriff is actually James Hetfield from Metallica, who, you know, even though he's got what's, essentially a cameo role in the movie. Honestly, I would have liked to have seen him in the movie a little bit more. Aside, I am a fan of Metallica music, but not just because of that. Just, I do feel that Hetfield has a presence to him. So it's like, it kind of would have been kind of nice to see him in the movie as like a foe to Ted Bundy, to Efron's character. Just as, when I reviewed the movie Ted Bundy, there was a cameo by Tom Savini. And I really wish Savini would have been in the movie more, because he played a detective who was interrogating, Ted Bundy in that movie. And it would have been nice, just to have somebody that kind of, somebody with a presence to them that they could kind of bounce off of. And, even though I know Hetfield is mostly known as a musician, he's not known as an actor. Still, he had something to him. He has kind of a presence and a chemistry to him that I think. But, he's being put in jail now. And, we learn about, the entire process through her eyes. And we're learning about the trial. We're learning about Ted Bundy's the lady who ends up becoming, his wife. I'm sorry, the name escapes me right now. The name of the other woman who married him and had a child with him. And so anyway, as she's struggling with all these things, and she begins to feel an incredible amount of guilt, because she did call the police, and she did tell them that they might want to look into him, and she feels she's betrayed him. And at the same time, she meets a coworker of hers who is played by Haley Joel Osment, who I've said this before. Excuse me for saying this. I've said this before. I feel like I want to say it again. Haley Joel Osment, he was somebody I liked him as a child actor. I liked him as little Forrest Gump. I liked him as the kid who sees dead people in The Sixth Sense. I've liked him in Artificial Intelligence and so on and so on. And for a while there, he disappeared, and it seemed like he was not going to be acting anymore. It's like, well, maybe he was one of those child actors, like his time as a kid was up, and that was it, and he wasn't going to act anymore. But here in the last few years, he started to appear in movies again. He's two Kevin Smith movies, Tusk and Yoga Hosers. I think he did a film called Sex Ed, which is a sex comedy, I think, and many other movies. And he's in this movie. And as the man who ultimately wants to win Elizabeth's heart, and sticks by her, even though she's still got feelings for Ted Bundy. She's still dealing with him and going through the trial, going through all of this stuff. And he stands by her, and he's very caring of her. He's very adoring of her. He wants to be there for her. And I think Haley Joel Osment, he does a fine job in the movie. He's incredibly likable and sympathetic. At one point, it may have not been the thing he should have done, but at one point when Efron tries to play, or he tries to call, the house, and Haley Joel Osment answers, and he stands up and tells, stop calling her, you're tearing her apart, leave her alone. And, so ultimately I think Haley Joel Osment did a fine job in this movie. Now, the one thing that bothers me though, is that when it comes to Haley Joel Osment, as of recent, I never really hear anybody talk about, has he done better as a child actor since being a child actor? He's grown up now. He's doing movies again. He seemed like he had a period where he wasn't acting for a while, but he's back again, and he's doing movie roles. Does anybody ever talk about if he's any good in movies? No, nobody ever talks about that. It seems like the one thing everybody talks about is his weight. I just think it's kind of funny that the man's constantly being fat shamed all the time, and nobody ever talks about, well, he was in Yoga Hosers. He was really good in that. Or he was in Tusk, yeah, he was all right in that movie. I never hear anybody talk about it. All I ever hear people talk about is his weight. It's like, folks, I'm pretty sure he knows he's overweight. He knows he's plus size and everything else. Leave him be. If he wants to lose weight, he'll do it. So just, try not to focus on his weight so much and try to focus more on his acting ability. Because that's the thing, he might be turning in some damn fine performances. Like I said, I think he did a good job in this movie. He did a good job for the part that he was given. And I think he was, a good male character, for her to bounce off of, as opposed to Efron playing Ted Bundy. Now, like I said, if you're going into this expecting to see Efron doing the killing and stuff like that, you're going to have to skip this one, because Efron doesn't do that. And I got to be honest, I'm not really sure how I feel about that, because overall, Efron does do a serviceable job as Ted Bundy. He plays the charm, he plays the smarm. There are moments where he does strongly resemble Ted Bundy in some instances, and then in some instances, not so much. But overall, I think he did a fine job with the material, but I'm not sure. He does have a couple of dark moments, but we don't really see him kill anybody or anything. At one point, it's kind of hinted at, but it's kind of more left to your imagination. But we don't really see him do the killing. We don't see him do any of that stuff. And to be truthfully honest with you, I think that was kind of a wise decision that they didn't have him do that, because I don't know technically if he could play that. And honestly, I don't know if people wanted to see him do that. I think to some people, it might have made them laugh at the movie in a wrong way to see him playing a killer. I don't know, because he's mostly known for playing either the funny guy or the heartthrob. And in this movie, that was how, because this story takes place from his girlfriend's point of view, that's how she always saw him. She saw him as, the dreamboat, the knight in shining armor, the man who could really do no wrong. And, like I said, she's dealing with a lot of guilt. It's eating her up. The fact that she, turned her back on him, or she felt that she turned her back on him. It's like essentially she did, but it's understandable why. And no point in the story you know, does the audience particularly hate her for what she did. I think probably the only thing that can get on the audience's nerves a little bit would be just the fact that she's constantly feeling guilty about it. And you know, if he was a good guy and he understood, that she's just like, hey, I just figured, I'm not believing that, if that's how she felt about it, she could have just told him, I don't honestly think it's you, but look, they're looking for a man named Ted. He drives a VW, Matt, has this kind of description and everything else. I just say, let's go ahead and just, get you through there so they can leave you alone and we move on with our lives. If that's the way she felt about it, she could have told him that. But overall, the movie is a good movie, and it does have its place if you are interested in the story of Ted Bundy from different aspects. Then yeah, I would definitely say go ahead and give this movie a watch. But like I said, Efron kind of keeps from playing some of the darker moments, some of the more vicious moments. And like I said, I think in this case that was kind of a wise decision, that you don't really see that it's kind of more just hinted at. Because like I said, I don't know if it just would have come off as kind of unintentionally funny that Efron's playing a killer. So I don't know how he would have played. I don't know if he could have pulled that off. But the way he's portrayed in this particular version, Efron did do a good job. And this particular role of Ted Bundy is more suited to his strengths as an actor. So I feel that works best. And besides, there are many other movies. If you want to see you want to see the story from his murder spree point of view. So there's that. The movie is like I said, I think it's a well-made movie. The director Joe Berlinger, prior to making this movie, did a basically kind of a mini series documentary, which is also on Ted Bundy, called the Ted Bundy tapes. That actually, I very much recommend that documentary. That documentary is very, very good. That covers many, many aspects of the Ted Bundy case. Talking to family, friends, even Elizabeth herself, and talking to the detectives and talking to everybody, even Ted himself. So I think that's. I do admit, when it comes to these films, some of them can be hit and miss, but it's like when you get a documentary, I would have to say, if somebody asked me, what would I prefer, this movie or that Netflix documentary, I'd probably say the Netflix documentary, but still, I would say, if you are a true crime buff and you are interested in the Ted Bundy story from many different aspects, I definitely say go ahead and give this movie a watch, but just don't expect it to be the darkest movie about Ted Bundy. There are many other ones, but this one here, this is more if you just want, kind of see Ted Bundy through somebody else's eyes. So. But yeah, I think that's going to pretty much do it. You got the prosecuting attorney in the movie, played by Jim Parsons, who everybody knows is Sheldon on Big Bang Theory. Does a very capable job. I would actually like to see this man do more. I mean, there's nothing wrong with him doing comedy on Big Bang Theory. Well, the show's over now, I believe. But I honestly feel that Jim Parsons is an actor who, given the chance, he can handle some good dramatic roles. He definitely does. He definitely does have a character to him. He has a presence about him. And I think, honestly, given the right roles, I think this guy could emerge into a really fine actor. I really do. Then also, too, the judge is played by John Malkovich, who, let's face it, John Malkovich is one of those actors. You're not going to cry if you have to watch John Malkovich in a movie. He's that good. And he actually ends up being the one actor in the movie who really does kind of, like spar off, because that's what happened in real life at the trial. The judge and Ted Bundy just kind of, beat heads a lot of the time. So that was kind of nice to see, and Malkovich really does bring the gravitas to it. He really brings a strength to it, to his role. And he's somebody like, you do kind of want to see him. It's weird, but it's like in a roundabout way. You do want to, he's trying to be fair. He's trying to be, but he's strict. At the same time, though, too, you are kind of rooting to see him get Ted Bundy. So Malkovich does a really good job, even though he really is. And I believe he even said Malkovich said so himself that he pretty much just followed a lot of the court transcript and just kind of based his performance on that. And from seeing video of the judge and how he handled the courtroom and things like that. So I think he just kind of went off that, which whatever, still, but he does a great job. And like I said, overall, the I can't really think of a weak link in the as far as the performances go in this movie. Like I said, I'm glad that they didn't try to really play up the murder aspect of it because, like I said, I don't think Efron really would have fit that. But Lily Collins, I have to admit, I'm pleasantly surprised by this young woman. She really, I think in the beginning, a lot of people really didn't have confidence in her as an actress. That they never really thought she was going to be able to pull off, carrying an entire movie herself and being dramatic and showing emotion and things. I think she did a good job. I really do. It's like I would not cry if I have to watch her in a movie again. Where she's the lead star, the lead character, and everything. And I think she does good. Overall, good performances. The movie is, it's well filmed. It's beautifully photographed. So yeah, I do. I would say, it's like give it a shot. I just can't. I just honestly, in good faith, I can't stand here and tell you it's going to be your favorite movie of Ted Bundy. I would say, like I said, for me, the movie is based off of Ted Bundy. If I had to pick one, probably right off the top of my head would have to be Deliberate Stranger. That would be my favorite movie based on Ted Bundy because that kind of has a little bit more of everything. That's it shows some of the it shows some of the it shows enough as far as the killings go. It shows enough, not too much, But then again, this was a 1980s TV movie. Let's see here. You do have part of the story from the Elizabeth character's point of view, which is good. Then you have, from the investigate. So that kind of has a little bit of everything. So that would have to be my favorite. But this one here, I still say give it a watch. If you're interested, and it is, you are kind of interested in the Ted Bundy story from his girlfriend's point of view, how she saw him, how she dealt with things and everything else. Even though, admittedly, 100% of the movie isn't the truth. They admit that they did embellish a couple of things here and there. Still, give it a watch. It's a decent film. I recommend it. Anyway, yeah, I think if I keep talking more, I'm just going to end up repeating myself. So that's going to do it. If anybody took the time to watch this video, I thank you for doing it. I appreciate you for doing it. I honestly hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe to Horror Heaven 77. There'll be weekly videos posted. And again, take care. And who knows? Maybe I might see you out walking around at night.